Forsiki. I go by Rudy. I'm a Rising 1L here at Syracuse University. I just finished my undergrad a couple months ago here at the university. I'm lucky enough to be working with the Veteran Legal Clinic here at campus. I just do some research. I need logistical things they need to help with, and I just learn a lot. But luckily today, on Deep Dive number 20, I have two JDI students, and their talks today about a grant we've received to help homeless veterans in the area. So we want to start off, Andrew, if you want to introduce yourself, like how'd you end up at Syracuse and what do you do?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Patterson. First and foremost, I'm a father of two young children. I live in Marshfield, Massachusetts. It's a suburb of Boston, just south of the city, north of the Cape Cod area. I spent 17 years in the Army, both active and reserve. I deployed to Afghanistan in 2012, and I was a police officer in the Boston area for a number of years. I recently graduated from Syracuse Law back in May. I previously, prior to graduating, had been a clinic student for almost 2 years preceding my graduation, and I decided to stick around as a research assistant after graduation. So I'm going to stick around here, keep working with the clinic, keep working with the homelessness grant that I've been working on for a little over a year now, and keep working with the clients that I've began with back in 2021, and ideally get to kind of watch them finalize their claims and get the benefits that they deserve. I'm hoping to take the bar exam in February 2025, so that'll be kind of my end point here with the clinic once I take the bar. And then my hope is to work in the veteran sphere of clinic law moving forward. I'll either work for the VA directly through a federal employment service, or I might do a third-party advocacy group that allows me to advocate for veterans in a third-party capacity, not working directly for the federal government. But those are kind of the options I'm perusing now, and for the time being, I'm looking forward to continuing this homelessness grant, getting all the benefits that we can to all the veterans we can.
Awesome, thank you. And that's really cool that you want to continue to work with veterans afterwards.
Absolutely.
Naomi, if you don't mind, if you could introduce yourself and a little bit about your background and how'd you end up here?
Sure. So I am Naomi Harvey. I am technically a 2L, rising 3L, depending on how many credits I can squeeze in here this summer. I am a JDI student and currently working full-time. I am a part brewery owner, which is super fun off to the side. And then for my day-to-day job, I am a certified financial planner and special needs consultant for the litigation legal world. That's sort of the bread and butter. Joined the JDI program because I really wanted to really expand my advocacy, not, of folks with special needs, folks with disabilities. That was the original reason I wanted to become a lawyer, so that my voice was a little louder and reached a little bit more corners. So I'm pretty excited about that. And then the VA clinic, or my entry into the VA clinic, is something I'd wanted to do. I'd heard about it in my first year. Again, with the background of working with folks with disabilities, I've had the honor of working with a lot of veterans in a lot of litigations like 3M and, the Camp Lejeune and stuff like that, and even the 9/11 fund. And I loved the veterans population. My dad was a vet. He was a Vietnam vet. But working with veterans this is whole other level of discipline and specificity, and it feeds into all the things that I love. So as soon as I had the opportunity to join the VA clinic, I did.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for all that, and thank you for everything you do. Start for the first question is you're both JDI students. Can you explain what does that mean, being a JDI student, and then also being a JDI student, how are you able to connect with the veteran law clinic and still work so well with people here in Syracuse?
Naomi, the first question.
Oh, go ahead.
I think the model of the JDI program is modernizing legal services and meeting the students where they are. And that's very much what we're trying to do for veteran services moving forward and into the future, because so much of veteran services isn't local. You're either reaching out to the regional offices, you're reaching out to far-fetched lands in Washington, D.C. to get these veterans connected to the administrative agencies that are actually going to grant them benefits. So using the JDI model has allowed us to expand access and expand the ability to seek out veterans, as well as the ability to meet the veterans where they are either in their homes or, if they're homeless in certain circumstances, having outreach coordinators, be physically present with the veterans, but allowing us and at the legal clinic, the JDI students, to process the paperwork, to work with some of the regional offices to establish connections, and to work with, even the courtrooms in Washington, D.C. that we're inevitably going to be representing these veteran clients in front of. So being able to be comfortable on Zoom, being able to present to a court in a Zoom capacity, and being able to articulate yourself in a way that, carries beyond just your local regional office, and allows both veterans and the administrative agencies that we work for and work with, to understand what the veterans need and how we provide it to them on a local level, through the outreach coordinators that we do have physically here.
Wow, I didn't know that you could be on court on Zoom as the lawyer. That's pretty amazing. It's pretty modern.
Well, I mean, I think the COVID era really shifted the models significantly. That's when I started law school. I was a 1L during the COVID years. Originally, I was going in person, and then everything shifted due to the virus. Everything went online: law school, courtrooms, everything. And a lot of that stuck around. You see it a lot in remote work. Obviously, the JDI program itself is sustained, and even courtrooms are incorporating, Zoom meetings, Zoom conferences, even certain trial advocacy via Zoom to increase efficiency and to increase access. And that's exactly what we're able to do through the JDI program and for our veterans.
And it's been incredible. I will tell you, with my experience of working with settlements and court approval process, exactly what Andrew said, like even past COVID, the virtual Zoom space to advocate for a client is still very prevalent, specifically because of the efficiency factor. Judges can see more people. You can get people who are disabled or have anxiety leaving the home to not have to travel to go to court. And then even the fee reduction, right? So in my world, if you have a large mass tort, for example, and we have a bunch of children that have to go through court approval, in that capacity, how do you pay for getting everybody to the right courthouse and transferring everybody over there if it's a large group of people, right? So the JDI program was sort of at the forefront of that for law students. It's been around since COVID for the courts themselves. And now, like even with my client in the Veterans Clinic, he's a non-traveler. It's very difficult for him to travel anywhere, even though he's very close to the VA hospital. And so a lot of his CMP exams have been via Zoom, which have been very, very helpful, and also giving a lot of advocacy to the like Altamont house, and the house that he's staying at is getting them to learn how to do Zoom so that they can better serve their own clients as well. So it's been great.
Well, so you spoke about clients. How's working in the clinic? How you prepare for the real world of law?
Well, so it's funny that you asked that. One of the main reasons that I was really attracted to the VA clinic wasn't just because of the touchy-feely, which is always going to be there, right? Helping someone who served honorably for our country is a big deal. We can't dismiss that, right? But also, and I think Andrew will agree with me, you get through a part of law school and you realize it's kind of a slog. It's very difficult. And there starts to be this thing of like, where's that light at the end of the tunnel, right? When am I going to be a lawyer? And what's so beautiful about the clinics is that you're able to, as a student attorney, be doing things that you would be doing as a full-fledged bar certified attorney, supervised, of course, by another attorney, but it really gives you that experience and really provides that momentum to keep going and, not peel back on that momentum. So for me, the JDI program, the VA clinic, hand in hand is like propelling me through my last year, I think.
Yeah, and I really find that the clinic experience is really kind of tied together that the personal experience that you lack as a JDI student. Obviously I'm not physically going to class. I'm not immersed in the law school experience, and I don't have a community of law students around me here in Marshfield. But being able to participate in the clinic on a day-to-day basis gives me that. It gives me a small community of other students that have like-minded and common goals. It gives me a I've been at the clinic since 2021, so it gives me something real to kind of tie me back in and, link me to the Syracuse community and make me part of it. Whereas, substantive law, the JDI books are the same as the JDR books. So sitting in the library and studying, you're getting the same material. And most of the substantive law classes, aren't that interactive. You're interacting with your professors and you're trying to deal with your cold calls and respond appropriately. But, substantive law is very much you're reading the material, absorbing it, rereading it, testing it, and redoing that on a repetitive basis. And ideally, you have some friends and cohorts that you can do that with. But having this JDI clinical experience kind of creates that for you. And it really makes the circle whole when it comes to the full law school experience, because there are shortcomings to the JDI program. The lack of immersion is certainly a factor. But I think it is, uniquely successful for those of us who are either transitioning careers or into a second phase of life that, might not benefit from 4 years immersed into a university environment, or it might just not be practical. So I think it's been really helpful for that.
Yeah, well, you guys both gave some extra points of why it's so important. Like, even though if you're an online JD student, that shouldn't prevent you from being productive in the clinics, and it'll benefit you in large capacity, it seems like.
Like what Andrew was saying, it keeps you from being isolated, right? I remember my first year as a JDI student, you're looking at all these faces on Zoom, you're going through some of your hardest classes ever, the weed out classes, as we love to call them, right? But there's a fear factor of reaching out to someone, finding someone in your time zone, finding someone that, thinks differently from you or thinks similar to you so that you can study more effectively. There's that just initial hesitation because law school is overwhelming to begin with. But you add a clinic to the mix and all of a sudden you're automatically collaboratively working and you're working with a client. And so all of that anxiety and fear just sort of fades in the background. And I have found that working in the clinic makes me, in my classes better. Interfacing with the professors, not having hesitation or fear, not worried about saying the wrong answer, not worrying about stumbling. And that's what the clinics are doing, is they're making you go through the actual work where you now have that pressure behind the scenes that say, this is someone's life, this is someone important, and this is someone of value, and it's your responsibility to make sure you fill out those forms correctly, and that you're checking in with them, and that they feel heard and listened to, and all of that stuff. And then it just changes the dynamic of how you interface with other JDIs. It's fantastic.
I feel like you're bringing a good point of working with real people. Syracuse University has a unique pleasure of being so close to a VA hospital, and Syracuse University has been granted a grant that help combat homelessness in the Syracuse area. How has that experience been for you guys?
Well, I must say that the VA Legal Services, the homelessness grant, has fundamentally changed the way we engage with our veterans. It strengthened the local partnership with our VA Medical Center, because we're actually able to reach out and bring clients physically into the building and introduce them to the decision makers on some occasions. And it sensitizes us to the unique needs of the homeless veteran population here in Syracuse, what exactly they need, why they're in the positions they're in, and what we can do to better them. I'd point out that the National Veterans Resource Center is across the street from the Syracuse Legal Center, which is next to the Syracuse Hospital, or the VA hospital. So it really is a one-stop shop for veterans who can access the National Resource Center, access the VA Law Center, and access the VA hospital all within one city block. So that's a hugely powerful thing, I think, especially for a homelessness population that typically tends to be located in urban centers and has a difficult time moving about the region to access appointments and the variety of things that are expected of veteran applicants. So having all of that in one spot has just been really helpful. And especially for those of us that do travel to the Syracuse area on a regular basis, it's hugely beneficial for us to have that one-stop shop. I can go across the street to the hospital, I can go to the resource center, and I can go to the clinic, all within 5-minute walk of each other. So I can accomplish so much more during the short weeks or weekends that I'm able to come up and provide physical services in Syracuse.
Yeah, definitely the close proximity to all the resources and that definitely helps. It makes it a lot easier. I know I'm just doing like the back end work of helping you guys, but it's pretty convenient having everything centrally located.
And just think about it mentally as well, right? So we're talking about hospitals and administrative agencies, and generally speaking, not picking on any single one of them, getting paperwork and getting people to process things at a time that you want them can be somewhat difficult. However, when you're neighbors, everyone knows your neighbors, and so it just makes it a little bit easier because you're not like going across too many things where they're like, well, they're never going to see me or what have you, right? So this, I find that neighboring environment also makes the agencies with, the hospital and the Veterans Administration, the legal clinic work quite seamlessly because you can probably look out the window and see them,
Yeah, and like you mentioned earlier, Altamont, that's only like a 15-minute drive from the campus. And so I've been there twice now. I'm going there, I believe, next week again. Thanks to the grant, we're able to really utilize some resources and have doctors there to help veterans help combat homelessness through maybe getting some disability if they qualify. And you want to talk about that a little bit? How that process has been, and maybe how, as a human being, you guys in school have been a little more sensitive now or eye-opening to what a homeless veteran is really.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I understand the veteran population from my perspective. I did 17 years in the Army, so I knew a lot of veterans and really was immersed in that community. And coming here and being inserted into the kind of homelessness grant, where the efforts are towards homeless veterans, it's really opened my eyes to the spectrum of why veterans become homeless and the diverse number of circumstances and kind of the rabbit hole that they end up going down that ends up sucking them into a homeless environment that isn't always within their control. And I think everyone has a perspective of what homeless people look like and how they act and it really changes your perspective when you see someone that doesn't seem homeless and doesn't seem like they should be and doesn't seem like that based on the resources they have or based on their education level or the fact that they have a full-time family that they should be homeless in the circumstance that they're in, and really fundamentally understanding their circumstance and why it exists for them the way it does, as opposed to going in with a broader, I know how homeless people are, I'm going to help them all. I think with that perspective, you shortchange your clients because you're answering the questions for them when you should be listening, when you should be sitting there and writing down, okay, this is the file. This is the information that I really need to absorb and understand. And you're not going to get that without actually dealing with these people in person, on the ground and talking to them back and forth. So that's where I see that the perspective has been very much diverse.
I mean, it's hard to follow up with that because Andrew's hitting it, the nail right on the head. There is a common misconception across all states about what makes a homeless person houseless, right? And the reality is that, why someone is without a home or a house is really particular to their individual situation. It can be mental illness. It can be a physical issue. It can be a trauma. It can be a lack of support. It can be a literacy issue and not knowing where to find and how to go for resources. And why this grant is so significant, I will say this, because I do work with a lot of, I'm an advocate in a lot of different areas for folks that have housing issues, is that what makes the veterans population quite unique is that it's harder to get service-connected benefits than it is to have someone try to help you get a general governmental benefit, right? And why is that so valuable and so important? With a general governmental benefit, every American citizen, if they have certain criteria, have a certain disability, can get those benefits, okay? But with a veteran, it is so valuable because you're not only trying to get a service-connected benefit, so you're not proving just a disability, you're proving that it's service-connected, which makes the paperwork harder, which makes the conversation more difficult, getting the right language down more difficult. but you're also trying to get that person what they're deserved because they served the country, right? It's a very much higher level benefit from a personal standpoint when you're talking about advocacy, independence, self-determination, getting someone who's been without a home and saying, look, you know that you've worked and honorably served the country. You're having a hard time getting through this paperwork. A lot of the time, like in the client I'm working with now, he was just thrilled to be recognized through service connection, right? It took me a while to get him to understand the monetary purpose of it, because he was just finally relieved that the service that he did for the country was being recognized at a time when he needed help. So I think that's what makes the homeless veterans grant so valuable. Is it's already hard. The paperwork is hard. The interface is hard. And then you add the VA benefit level on that. The service connected part is even harder. So it's just that the legal clinic is so important.
Yeah, you guys both said some excellent points. And like before I started working here at the veteran clinic, I had this, preconception of what a homeless person is. And I felt like I was pretty wrong when I went to Altamont. Like they'll tell us their story. And I heard some of the story I heard, and I was like, this could happen to me. This could happen to anybody. Like you got hurt, you got divorced, lost your job, and hard times and accumulated, and they ended up there, unfortunately. And I was like, wow, this is very fortunate for the service member. Luckily, you have a great team like you both to helping them, and led by Professor Kabbalah. Hearing them out was like just I felt very important for them. A couple of them shed tears, and they really appreciated just us being there. And I'm a Navy veteran, did 5 years in the submarine, and I went with another student veteran, Brian Bryant, who's a veteran as well in the Army. And I feel they appreciate a little bit there. And then just getting connected, as you said, Naomi, paperwork's hard, but some of these veterans are saying like their base closed down. And how do you even handle that point in time? Like, so I don't I do think they need you guys. They need people who care like you guys who like really want to help them. And I think it's extraordinary. And luckily the VA is putting some serious money into grants to help places like the Veteran Law Clinic here at Syracuse University to combat homelessness in our area. Clearly is making wonders. People, just a short time I've been there, seen people go from 0 to 50% disability, and it's definitely life changing for someone in that scenario. I do have a question for you, Naomi. If I heard correctly, you're not a veteran, right?
No, I am not.
How do you find it easier or harder to try to have like empathy for these veterans or work with them a little more? Maybe the jargon is not the same. Like,
So I work really, really hard, especially with the veterans population, to listen, right? I automatically know coming to the table there is terminology and there is an atmosphere that I am not aware of. And I mean the life in the military, then going life into civilian life, and all the stuff that happens in between. There's just how they served, why they served, things like that. There's things I'm never going to truly understand as a non-veteran, and you have to be okay with that, right? It's not your job to say, well, I get what you're saying and I totally understand and all of that stuff, because I won't in certain circumstances understand. I have a number of family members who are military. That doesn't mean that I understand what they even go through, even though they tell me all the time, right? So it's just not the same experience. But what that does for me, though, is it takes me a step back, and I get to listen, and I get to slow down and make sure that I'm hearing not just the thing in my head that says, this is what Naomi wants to do for them. I want to make their life better. I want to do this and I want to do that. That's that self-serving of, I know what's better for you than you know for you, right? So if you go in as a non-veteran and you're working at the clinic, it's really, really important to stop yourself and say, okay, what do they want me to do? Case in point, I'll give you an example of this. So my client that I'm working on this summer, he was in the Navy. He was honorably discharged. He got commendations during his time in the Navy. But he had a very traumatic assault during his time in the service. And if you look at his records, you can see everything going up and great and fine and all this good stuff. Then something happens, and then we start to go down right towards the tail end of when his service is over. And then when you look at his work record and civilian life, you see that traumatic experience has affected family, friends, work, his ability to maintain work, and then leads to other things. He has PTSD, he has anxiety, but subsequent issues led to a stroke. So we're just talking about the worst of the worst, what this guy dealt with. He files a claim to the VA, immediately denied, even though there's a VA doctor that agrees with the incident, pinpoints the incident, still gets a denial, right? And that's how he got referred, because he's at Altamont House, and that's how he got referred to us. And, so if I'm just talking to this guy and I have that wrong voice in my head, my voice says, hey, I want to do this for this guy, and I need him to say these things, and I need the forms to look like X, Y, and Z, right? That's the wrong way to go about it, because you're going to end up in a pickle, and you're going to end up, thinking what he said, or what should be on a statement, or what should go into a record or a file or a report to the VA. And instead, you listen. And you listen and you hear, over time. In the beginning, he didn't want to talk about a lot of things because he didn't know me, he didn't trust me, and he'd already, had 2 other student attorneys work with him before that he had just gotten used to, and now they were off for the summer. And then poor guy gets me, right? Here I am. But after, a lot of talking and texting and talking and texting and talking and texting, we really got a sense of what was the most important to him. I mean, yes, the monetary thing in his brain was important to him, but it was, again, I should be service connected. I served. This happened during service. And up to that point, a lot of the VA was just sort of blowing him off, right? That didn't happen. We don't believe you. Your dates are incorrect. You keep saying the wrong date. And we're just like, well, he's post-stroke and he's having memory issues. Like, I don't know what to tell you. But in that process of just not being shy about it, kind of what Andrew said in the beginning, and staying in touch and not letting him blow me off, right? Building that trust, listening to him, we were able to put in the right forms at the right time, and he finally got service connected. And again, all of my phone calls with him, I can talk about the money, but he doesn't want to talk about the money. He wants to talk about the fact that he got service connected. So, kind of full circle, is it harder? I think it is. I think Andrew probably has a more intuitive nature, having been served in the military, of what it's like, and military life and then civilian life. So, yeah, that makes it harder for me. But, if you're willing to do the work, I think the rewards are there for sure.
Well, you made a point about the money is important to them, but it's not everything to them. There's a few veterans out there, the homeless shelter, saying now they care so much about getting their discharge upgraded. And, that never popped in my head. I was like, you're homeless. Maybe you should care about the money more to get out of here. But a lot of them, like, no, I want to be honorable. I don't want to be dishonorable. I took the oath. And that was really shocking to me. I was like, man, these veterans truly do care still about, their reputation. They're not just some people on the street. They're real people that have real issues, and they have a heart. They care.
And the monetary, I don't want to dismiss it. The monetary portion is so important with regard to what we're doing for the homeless population, right? I mean, there has to be a way to transition someone into independence. That's sort of the goal. But you're absolutely spot on, Rudy. It is all about what I gave and what I need back in that, say it out loud situation. I served, please serve me.
I think so much of it is validation.
Yeah.
Like Naomi was saying, with the service connection, it's so huge, and money is great and money is wonderful, but when you've been divorced 3 times, you don't have a home, and you're on your 3rd drug addiction, money doesn't feel that great. It's not going to help, and you need that validation to get them out of that hole. And you give them that validation. Okay, there's a reason. We can put this stuff behind you because there's a reason for it, and it's not your fault. And now we can move them forward with that money, which will help them moving forward. But without that validation, without that kind of self-serving ability where we're handicapping them by just giving them a bunch of money and not giving them a way out of the circumstance that they find themselves in, which is typically some sort of cycle of some sort of government benefit to, then they either spend it in a way that's it's improper, or they don't fully bring themselves into a mental state where they can succeed. And unfortunately, they end up reverting back into that, that predicament. We dealt with a homeless veteran that almost said, I don't want any money. I'm going to spend it all on drugs. And I don't want to do that. So I need more than just, putting money in my bank account. That's not helpful to me. And that was a really powerful thing to hear, because you understand that, these aren't people that are just looking for a handout. These aren't people that really want anything from you. They're kind of living their lives, and whatever circumstances they're in, they're homeless, but that doesn't weigh as heavily on them as you might think it would, and the way that we think it probably should. Like Raul mentioned, oh, you should care about this, and they're like, no, I want my service upgrade, and I want my validation so that I can look my kids in the eye. So I can, go home and feel honor for the service that I feel like I performed. And if you don't give them that, then, the money doesn't get them very far. So I think getting that service connection, like Naomi pointed out, it's so much more than just your standard government benefits. And beyond that, it's so difficult to find. And as a veteran myself, I come from the modern wars, if you will. Iraq, Afghanistan, my service started in 2004. So all of my records are generally digitized. I have my DD-214. I can find it from like 15 different sources. But when I've talked to some Vietnam era veterans who were drafted, didn't want to be there, left as soon as they could after their 3 years, 2 years of those were in Vietnam, by the way, and didn't collect all this documentation and build the record for themselves. And now it's 30 years later, and the VA is mad about dates, and the VA is, not sure that, this person died or that person died. And that's a really unfair and difficult, aspect of veteran advocacy is identifying on that level, saying, okay, we understand, but, we need to establish the record, and then also establishing the concept of mental health to a lot of these veterans. The older, Vietnam War era veterans didn't even understand what PTSD was, didn't understand why they were, returning home still addicted to the substances they started when they were over there, and got discharged as a result. That there was, there's a recourse for that now. Educating them and bringing that to them is half the battle sometimes.
That's a bunch of excellent points, Andrew. You said a few things about resources and education. Since working at the clinic, how have you seen a different viewpoint of the VA resources available to veterans? Did any of them stand out to you? Were you shocked by how many resources there were?
I mean, there's so many, and it's so broad. I would argue you need a healthy 1L year to even understand the VA system.
Yeah.
And once again, we're dealing with veterans that were drafted out of high school and haven't dealt with a bureaucratic system in 40 years. And those of us in law school are struggling to fully understand the full spectrum of benefits. And as someone that has benefits and has been accessing them since I got out in 2019, I'm still trying to figure it out, for myself, and working with the veterans. Oftentimes they'll bring up to me what their issue is, and potentially how to a VA solution for that, and then I have to go research it. And I have to look into, okay, what are the parameters of this benefits program that I wasn't even aware of. So using the veterans to a lot of them have a lot of experience within the VA themselves. Some of them decades worth of ratings and claims, and they've been through the ringer, if you will, a few times. So actually reaching out to them and using them as an educational resource is often helpful. And on the other end, it's really beneficial to them to explain to them what each part of the VA does, and how it interacts with the other parts. The VHA, the Health Administration, being a forward-looking organization that provides medical services to veterans and, tries to get them better, if you will, versus the Veterans Benefits Association, which administers veterans claims, is, backward looking, and tries to establish service connections. It tends to be a lot more adversarial. So when working with veterans, it matters which provider they're going before. Are you going through a VHA provider or a VBA provider? Because how I'm going to advise you is going to be very different based on who you're actually going to see. And if you don't understand those fundamentals, you're not going to succeed in veterans law.
Naomi, have you been a little shocked about how many resources there are from the VA?
So if we talk about the VA clinic benefits, right? One of the bigger shock that gratefully I love it. I'm so happy we have it, was the addition of an independent doctor exam, right? That benefit has been huge, is an independent medical provider that can do their own exam prior to a CMP exam. With regard to veterans benefits in general, I am well versed in all of them. However, what Andrew was kind of alluding to, or I think he got to, was what is always shocking to me is how hard it is to know them all as a veteran, be aware of them, and then how it's usually word of mouth that you hear about them and not necessarily from the VA itself, right? So I think that's always a little shocking to me, that it's kind of like, I don't know, support groups between communities that says, oh, hey, you have this, I have this, I'm on this benefit, I've never heard of this benefit. And that's how a lot of veterans start learning about these resources, right? Whether it's something like DIC because it's for a spouse who, whose veteran passed away, or some of the medical benefits like you were saying, but pension, maybe I served in a time of war, but I don't have enough to get a good compensation. And so maybe I need some sort of facility care, maybe I can get some pension benefits and things like that. But it's really, for veterans, it's really veterans serving veterans. That's what's so amazing to me that I find with this community, is that it's not coming directly from the administration itself. It is literally veterans teaching other veterans what's out there.
Yeah, so I personally did 5 years on the submarine, and that community, like how close knit we are, we didn't know anything about VA resources. When I got out, I'm sure Andrew, I'm sure your community was smaller too, and I'm sure you guys played a tough guy a lot. And there's a lot of veteran learning on veteran, and I was on Reddit a lot, and then I would call the VA like, "Hey, is this real?" And then I'll do a lot of research to figure it out. But that's not something like maybe a homeless veteran has that capability to, like, go on a computer and figure it out or call. So luckily, the Syracuse Law Veteran Clinic has you guys to help.
Yeah, most of my knowledge comes from, again, I used to call the VA all the time, and it was just sort of a nightmare. But working in the mass tort litigation world, it's because I have veterans calling me and saying, I have this weird benefit, and then telling me whether I'm right or wrong, which I love, by the way, which makes me do what Andrew does, which is go immediately and research for several hours so that I will never not know that benefit moving forward. So it's, I didn't learn it in school. I didn't learn it because some lawyer taught me. I didn't learn it because I had the VA tell me something, awesome on the phone. It's because veterans explained it to me and then pointed me in the right direction. And then I had to research it and make sure that I knew all the ins and outs. Crazy.
Earlier you talked about the doctor. Does that doctor you guys have? Can you talk about him a little bit? And then is that a result of the grant you got from the VA?
Yeah, so the grant is allowing the VA clinic to contract with an independent medical provider. And it's been, well, I can speak to my case. So it was very huge in my case because, as I mentioned earlier, the first time there was a filing for my homeless veteran, it was an absolute denial, even though there was already a VA doc that did all of their things, right? So what we were able to do is do an independent exam, not give up, keep fighting, do an independent exam and this doctor went through every moment in time. So it's basically all of the pre-me student attorneys and the professor and this doctor creating a timeline to show traumatic event and then what happened as a result afterwards, which the VA was sort of denying from the front end. But because this independent doctor knows the VA so well, they're able to create a report that's in the right language that the VA understands, and that's the terminology that they understand. It's not just some random doctor, right? It's someone who understands the inner workings. And that's really what pushed over the envelope and got us the service connection, even though well, let me take another step back, which is even though that rating wasn't what we wanted it to be, this gentleman should definitely be 100%, and they were not 100% rated, because the subsequent CMP exam was done virtually and our doctor saw him in person. We're able to file an appeal to point out the things you cannot observe via Zoom. Things like, what is the condition of their feet? What is the condition of their clothing? What is their hygiene issues that you might not be able to pick up via Zoom? And that's going to be a really good case for us to get the higher rating that we're looking for. And so for my case, it's been everything. So
Andrew, how's been your experience working with a doctor?
Yeah, having the ability to have an independent medical exam is huge, because a significant number of the veterans come to us and are seeking claims. They're seeking to put in claims for the benefits they feel they deserve, and typically the file supports. But unfortunately, typically the first doctor that they meet is the Veterans Benefit Administrator, who conducts the CMP exam. And as I've advised all of the veterans that I've worked with, that's an adversarial conversation. The path of least resistance for the CMP examiner is a denial. And that's the easiest route for the VA. And without the proper support, without the proper ability to communicate your condition and speak the VA languages, that's usually what happens. So having that independent medical examiner conduct a thorough, report that speaks VA language, that essentially translates the veterans' claims and their issues into a meaningful document that has a medical examiner signature on it, and then presenting that to the CMP examiner is a far more powerful way to go about filing these claims. So it gives us a whole dossier of information about our clients that signed off from a VA doctor or from our doctor, submitted to the VA, and they either have to impeach that information and say, oh no, this isn't accurate, we're saying it's something different, or they go along with what our doctors have already said. We essentially switch the burden from the path of least resistance being a denial to the path of least resistance to be granting of benefits. And then you see a lot more benefits granted, and whether they are denied or granted at a lower level than we would expect, the appeal process is so much easier, so much more effective. And there's an actual case when we present to a board of veteran appeals, where we have a doctor's signature and evaluation, and they have theirs, and you can kind of go back and forth and see which one's right, which is what you want in a court. Whereas if we don't have that doctors, we have the veterans lay reports, which honestly don't carry that much weight in VA adjudications. So you end up with they're going to go with their CMP examiner, and the appeals process is a much higher hill to climb. So having that at the forefront of all of our claims, to be able to identify, hey, this one might be a tight one, we want to get our own evaluation done first, is enormous. And the grant that the VA has given us has allowed us to do that, and allowed us to fund these independent medical exams, which would otherwise be prohibitively costly to our homeless veterans. They just wouldn't do it, and they essentially keep running into the same CMP wall that they've run into for years.
Wow. So being able to afford a private doctor due to the VA Veteran Homelessness Grant has been priceless for all these veterans, from what I'm hearing.
Life-changing for some of these vets.
Yeah, I mean, in the short time we've had it, I think we've had 4 or 5 claims that it's made the difference in.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. And that's amazing too, that the VA is giving out money to help veterans in need. And because there's so many things you hear about the VA, but this is a very positive thing they're doing, as long as it's used properly with student attorneys and college law clinics. So that's fantastic. I want to ask you guys, what have you personally learned about the homeless veteran population that you personally, I was like, wow, this really changed me. Like this really has been eye-opening.
I mean, I would kind of take your quote from earlier is the rich stories and how we all feel like we could quickly be there with a few wrong turns. Like not in like, oh, I see myself there, but in a lot of ways, you can put yourself in their shoes and be like, wow, this isn't that far off. It's a lot closer than I thought it would be. It's not necessarily this life of, homeless choices. It's a few wrong turns and some life events that happened to everyone that really took a toll and created this life story that this person has that's not over either. I'm amazed by the 35-year-old homeless veterans and then the 80-year-olds that both have valid and meaningful stories and both deserve to get the benefits that they've earned and be able to live out what they have left of a happy life.
Yeah, I would just echo that. I would say that the homeless veterans population is no different than any of us in the sense that we want to be heard, we want to be validated, we want to know that what we've done in our life made an impact that was recognized and that was valued. And the fact that Andrew is here and I'm here and the other students are here and you're here fighting for that is an incredible thing, because Andrew is not wrong. Couple bad turns and you don't know what could happen, and can you imagine someone dismissing you as if you didn't have a voice or that you didn't have value or what you sacrificed was not worth listening to? It's just terrible. So yeah, no different than us in that regard.
I just have a few more questions before you wrap up. Me being there twice now, there's some veterans that come in happy, they're encouraged that we're there to help them, and they're very responsive. There are also some veterans there that are not very happy. They might have a bad day that day, maybe their anxiety is really high. How difficult has it been working with the veteran population as well, as far as maybe just?
Well, I will say this: the happy or the not so happy. I mean, again, this is human connection we're talking about, right? And so, in that regard, there are times and there are days where the frustration level can be so high because in your memory and in your your vision of what your life was, this is going to happen to any of us too, by the way, we did these things and we feel like, again, no one's hearing us, no one's validating us, no one is watching out and supporting us. That's a human emotion. As much as a happy emotion is, so too is the frustration, so too is the fear of asking for help, so too is the fear of wanting someone to bring you up and not feel like it's a handout, which is a huge thing in the VA population, right? So I don't find it difficult if you meet people where they are. I mean, I just don't think that it's not the right thing to go in going, well, it's much easier to help the happy folk, right? It's all difficult, whether they're happy or they're having a bad day. It's just meet them where they are, listen to them, figure out what it is they need to have done and do it with respect and do it straight on and with honesty. And I think even the most frustrated turn into the most happy at the end. I don't know. I like to chip away. So
I mean, I would just say listen and respect their stories, and not go in with the perspective that you're there to help them, because homeless doesn't mean helpless. And I think if you go in with the perspective that you're just there somehow to prop them up, that one of the homeless veterans I was talking to is a lieutenant colonel, and he proceeded to be a pilot at Boeing. This man had an immense amount of intellect and experience and and military rank and had been in impressive positions. Just right now, he happens to be homeless because of a few circumstances in his life, some of which weren't even within his control. And to kind of look down upon him would insult him. And I feel as though, especially in the homeless population, there's a lot of that. Yeah. There's a lot of people that just look down and they're like, no, I'm not going to deal with you. You've chosen a life of homelessness, and that's not often the case. It's usually a transient position. Most people aren't homeless their entire lives, but there's a period that something happened, and they either need support or they just need a couple of minutes, a couple of years maybe, that they need to sort their stuff out, and having that helping hand, just being there, even if they're not taking it, just having it there and being, okay, it's here when you need it, I think is far more powerful than, I agree. It's easy to help the happy ones and the ones that know they're all their stuff, but more often than not, those are the ones that figure it out for themselves and don't need our help. So it's being that hand for, when he does reach up and says, all right, I'm ready to get out of this, that your hand is still there, and it's still sturdy enough for him to stand up on, his own feet using it. So I find that to be, the driving motivator for me when dealing with some curmudgeons or people that just aren't really happy to see you. And, it's just, hey, here's what the resources are, and we're always here. Here's the number. Here's my face. You can always look to it, and it'll always be there, no matter how many times you tell me to leave, like a parent to a toddler. You can't walk out on it. You got to be there. And, even in the hard times. So I think that's, how I mentally, kind of push forward when I don't have the most happy client ahead of me.
And I think that speaks to the importance of the clinic. Exactly, what Andrew's kind of saying is consistency, right? So if things have gone wrong in your life, or you made a couple of bad turns, whether they were in your control or they weren't in your control, and you find yourself houseless, right? There might be, understandably, a lot of reasons why you're not doing the happy-go-lucky thing, because they don't know if you're going to be there tomorrow, because a lot of people weren't. That's the reality, right? So having the clinic, and I know that Andrew's worked there a long time. This is my first summer. There were student attorneys that worked on my client before me, but the consistency is the VA clinic, right? They know where they can go. They know someone is working on their file. They know someone is going to be listening to them, and that no one's going away. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Just being there when they need it, like you said, Andrew, your hand's there whenever they're ready to grab it. You'll be there, pick them up. And I think men in general are hesitant to ask for help. So, a veteran that's down in his luck, maybe a little embarrassed or just, a little cranky at the time, it might be even harder for them. But whenever you're there asking, and whenever they're ready, you're there to help, or all of you guys are there to help. So that's pretty amazing the way you guys both put it. Something to ask all my guests here. What is your favorite quote and why?
So I don't really do quotes, but I do lyrics. I don't have like a quote that I listen
The
to.
podcast first, but this one
I'll give you a dearly beloved. We are all gathered here today to deal with this thing, or get through this thing called life, which is Prince, right? And I like that lyric, and I say that lyric when things are really tough, whether it's law school, whether it's work, whether it's dealing with someone, because the reality is we are just here together to get through this thing called life, and to remember to support one another, and don't back down from one another, no matter what's going on in this crazy world. So I give you Prince.
That was really good. Yeah. I've heard quite a bit in 20 episodes, and this is only my second podcast on Zoom, but so far it's going pretty well. And yeah, so that's an awesome lyric. Thank you.
I do love me some Prince.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. My personal favorite quote is Teddy Roosevelt's very famous "Man in the Arena." It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Teddy Roosevelt.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
I thought that was very applicable to the clinic, and to especially the VA homelessness cause, because those are definitely the men in the arena.
That's a fantastic quote. You answered all my questions. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything you guys last minute like to say about maybe the homelessness grant, the Syracuse Veteran Law Clinic.
I'm just glad to be a part of it. I'm glad that the clinic's getting recognized. I'm glad I'm here with both of you today to meet Andrew and you finally. Raul, it's been fantastic. So I'm sure it's well deserved because of the work that I'm seeing going through that clinic, and it's a happy day because I hear it doubled this grant, this lovely grant.
That's what I've heard as well. So that's pretty amazing.
Yes, and my thanks goes to you, Raul, for the exposure and building this podcast program, and as another modernization to the VA clinic and to the law school, and it's invaluable. Obviously you've had the chancellor, you've had a number of impressive guests, and I look forward to going onto YouTube and finding some of the past episodes to watch myself, and certainly into the future. I think this is a podcast that can gain some national traction. So keep up the good work. It's going great.
Yeah, hopefully the next couple of weeks, Deep Dive 20 with Roll, and you two will be on Spotify and Apple and all that stuff, and look forward to editing this one, getting it out there, and hopefully a lot more veterans at the law school or at Syracuse University want to get involved in the clinic and help out and learn so much, because my short summer so far, I've learned so much from you guys, how you interact with clients. I know, Andrew, last time I was on Long, you were on Zoom with one of them, and just how you spoke with him, how you interacted with them via Zoom too, which is harder. It's a whole nother element, homeless veterans or anybody in general. But that's awesome. Thank you so much. And you guys are both, you're doing phenomenal things in your respective, I know it's law, but like respective law fields. Some who just starting is really amazing to look at, the other side. Like, you're almost there, Naomi, and Andrew, you're about to take the bar, hopefully pretty next handful of months. That's fantastic to see you guys' journeys. But thank you so much for coming, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the day.
Appreciate everything. Appreciate your time.